All right, y'all. We're gonna see if this works. If it does not, then I don't take some time and figure out what's happening. I hope this works. How's it looking on y'all end? Before we get started, thanks for being patient, by the way. Greatly appreciate it. I mean, it looks like we're good, but I want to make sure that we are golden before we begin. Much better sync, so we're not choppy and stuff like that. We're all good. Looks good on my end. Look good on your end. If it looks good on your end, we're gonna go ahead and get started. I said I don't know what that was. I can't even tell you why I was so choppy. I just played with some things, and it's crazy because I did a stream last night and the stream came out perfectly. It's like a perfect stream. It's perfectly clean, all that good stuff. And then I do another stream this morning. I didn't change any of my settings whatsoever. It's OBS, man. So gotta move on, man. We're gonna have to move on from OBS. We're gonna have to level up a little bit here. So I want to run through this real fast. And once again, for those of you who have continued to come back, appreciate it. Looks good now. Looks good now. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. If you're just watching this and you've been watching while I was doing it, thank you. I really appreciate it. I need y'all. I need y'all here so I can make sure everything is smooth. So hopefully by the end of the day, I'm gonna look for a new program because this is taking way too long to way too much, man. I can't deal with the inconsistency of OBS. So let's get started. Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream segment of Mikasa Tsukasa, and I'm your host Niko House. Today I wanted to go over something really fast that was leaked out about the alleged attacks on the civilians in Syria, and it was allegedly, the attacks were allegedly conducted by the Syrian government. Now, we've known that the United States and the powers that be have had somewhat of a bad habit about lying about what's happening in Syria. We also know that the United States has a vested interest in the Assad government being toppled, and the United States would have a vested interest in basically having complete and total chaos in Syria, very similar to the complete and total chaos we see right now in Libya. So I've always been one of those who have been very skeptical about the blind allegations against Assad as far as specifically addressing the chemical weapons attacks. And I've always said we cannot just go around accusing people of being war criminals, accusing people of being brutal dictators, accusing people of fighting with terror, like siding with terrorists and all that good stuff, because our country has a really bad track record of telling the truth. And a lot of the times, It's merely an attempt to manufacture consent. And that's why we had to be skeptical whenever the US claimed something, an attack that would conveniently give us the quote unquote high ground, the moral ground to invade a country or bomb them or disorient them in any way politically or economically. So I wanted to go ahead and cover it. So the original article was released, but I actually want to do the coverage of Caitlin Johnstone's article. Now, a lot of you are probably familiar with Caitlin Johnstone because she's written a plethora of just either groundbreaking news, brilliant analysis, was one of those people who were out in front of the Russiagate scandal, was one of those people who were out in front on American election fraud, and she lives in Australia, and she could see from there how clear the election fraud was in the US. And she was even one of those people like myself who predicted that Donald Trump was probably going to win if we didn't elect Bernie. So and she's a big Tulsa supporter too, so I really like her. So Caitlin's dope, and she released an article a few days ago covering this, and I wanted to cover it for a while, but I wanted to do some more reading and make sure that everything checked out, and it turns out it does check out. Not that I would ever question Caitlin's credibility, because she's incredible as hell. She's credible. So it's hard to overstate the significance of this revelation, tweets former British MP George Galloway of a new report by the Working Group on Syria, Propaganda and Media, WGSPM. The war machine has now been caught red-handed to stage chemical weapons attacks for the purposes of deceiving our democracies into what could have turned into a full-scale war amongst the great powers. An important Duma Syria Assad chemical weapon attack development, and yet more evidence to suggest the quote-unquote attack was staged, as it now revealed that the OPCW suppressed expert engineers' reports that found the cylinders were likely not dropped out of the air. Tweets former Scotland Yard detective and counterterrorism intelligence officer Charles Shoebridge. The engineering assessment confirms our earlier conclusion. The excellent Moon of Alabama blog writes, the whole scene as depicted by quote-unquote rebels and propaganda organs was staged. The more than 34 dead on the scene were murdered elsewhere under unknown circumstances. Woo! Wow. That's heavy. That's heavier than I thought. I thought, wow, oh my God. Wow. So they're basically saying that these people had their dead bodies dragged to this scene. Whoa. That's a lot, bro. That's a lot. That's horrific. Let me continue. I don't want to take too long on this, but I want a lot of people to see this because this is important. The report has grabbed the attention of those who've expressed skepticism of establishment Syria narratives because it casts serious doubts on the official story that we've been told to believe about an alleged chemical attack in Duma, Syria on April of last year. A document titled Engineering Assessment of Two Cylinders Observed at the Duma Incident has been leaked to the WGSPM, which reveals that an engineering sub-team of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, the OPCW, the fact-finding mission in Duma, came to conclusions which differed widely from the OPCW's official findings on the Duma incident. Yet, we, the public, were never permitted to see this assessment because, if you all recall, brief aside, the OPCW did release their report and they tried to claim that beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was clearly the Syrian government who committed these attacks, although no one else came to these conclusions. Now, the OPCW, if I remember correctly, is appointed by, or was appointed and created by, the United Nations Security Council. If you know anything about the Security Council, then you know that it's not the United Nations Security Council. That is the United States Security Council, because basically we run it. That's the moral of the story. We run it. We do what we want to in the organizations that we create based off of the Security Council. sway in whatever way we want them to sway, which is why when the original OPCW report was released, people from in their own organization said, expert engineers from within the OPCW's own organization came to a completely different conclusion than the original report said, and their conclusion was completely left out of it. Not even saying like there are conflicting stories, there's conflicting evidence. Here it is, all, you know, here it's all of it right here for you to discern what you may believe or not believe to be the truth. And that's it, because it's just, they're supposed to be, OPCW is just supposed to be merely a fact finder. They're not supposed to be trying to persuade you one way or the other. They're just supposed to be presenting objective evidence, but that's not what took place. So we continue. The assessment's finding, which you can locate on pages 5 through 8 of the document. And matter of fact, I will link that document in the description. I'm going to link this in the description right now. So after you watch the video, you can go to it. So 5 through 8. I'm going to do just the first page, and I'll let you all go through the rest of it. For the final simulations, a realistic damage model was adopted for the concrete, initially without steel reinforcement, using the model under aforementioned assumptions, regardless of the inclination, angle, and initial velocity considered. The vessel not only fully penetrated the concrete plate, but still had a non-negligible velocity after penetration. Analysis of the evolution of the vessel deformation during the penetration of the concrete show that the vessel shape observed in the observed alleged impact event could have only been caused by an impact under the angle of 20 degrees, with an initial velocity significantly lower than the ones considered in the simulation. Based on these results, an initial part of the study was narrowed to establishing whether a concrete plate could stop a vessel dropped from a height assumed between 500 and 2,000 meters. This question helped to select certain model assumptions to explore all possibilities in the final model. In the final model of all possible elements that could contribute to an enhanced energy absorption and thus lower final vessel velocity were adopted. Although the images and indications can be found in hollow core slabs had been used, a full solid concrete plate. Okay, so basically these guys are super nerdy engineers and they know exactly what they're doing. Moral of that story. So I'm going to go to 19. Despite these measures, results of these simulations showed that the vessels was again not slowed down to a standstill. Consequently, based on simulation, the answer to the first basic question was negative. The simulation results thus indicated that the assumed drop heights, even the lowest of 500 meters, was too high to be able to reproduce the observed impact, I'm assuming supposed impact event. Further analysis of the simulation in real concrete craters and vessel shape also revealed the following discrepancies. Now, I'll let you read all through that, but that's just page 5. So basically, that's a breakdown of how they were able to come to the conclusions that they were able to come through. Like, this wasn't some like journalist who's doing some super YouTube sleuthing. This wasn't some like random person. You know, this was a sub-organization of the OPCW, highly trained engineers, experts, running simulation after simulation in the worst possible scenario, in the best case scenario, and they've concluded that there are way too many discrepancies to show that, hey, the government supposedly did it, but we can't really prove that. But if you, now my question is, are all of the engineers aside toadies, are all of the engineers aside apologists? In all seriousness, are all of them aside apologists and aside toadies? I mean, these are experts. These are engineers from the OPCW. They had to leak documentation because I don't know how else to spell out manufactured consent to go to war. Everything, not every, I can't say everything. I don't live in Syria. I'm not gonna say everything. I don't like to generalize like that. But I can say every single attempt that we've seen by the mainstream media to demonize Assad, demonize his government, and claim that he crossed that red line that Obama created, those were all lies. Those are what we would call attempts to manufacture consent to go to war. Those same, and it's like I said, if you've noticed, they're using basically against all of the enemies that we've had, quote unquote, enemies, adversaries, quote unquote. They use elections to demonize world leaders, and they use the candidate who was willing to speak out against the lies and try to loosely or directly associate that candidate with the quote unquote alleged wrongdoings of any particular person. Like the idea that Putin hacked the election. Obviously, we are in a major economic conflict with Russia as we speak. Mostly, let's be honest, by our own hand. We're the reason that the whole relationship with Russia and the US has grown unstable. It's because we're getting greedy. And the 5 or 6 people who are making decisions for the entire United States are so greedy that they don't even care about the potentiality for a nuclear holocaust. They don't care that apparently dead bodies were dragged and into a location and their organs were spread by hand. A weapon was placed down on the ground and was pretended to be a weapon, a chemical weapon that was dropped. And it was like, once again, and this wasn't, mind you, the OPCW wasn't the first, or the leaked documents weren't the first to make this claim. People had been ringing the alarms to the suspect nature of these supposed chemical weapons attacks since April. Even Rand Paul spoke out against this. Now, Caitlin Johnstone goes on to say, the document put forth multiple hypothetical scenarios in which 2 gas cylinders could have wound up in the locations, location 2, location 4, where they were found. The assessment concludes that the dimensions, characteristics, and the appearance of the cylinders and the surrounding scenes of the incidents were inconsistent with what would have been expected in the case of either cylinder being delivered from an aircraft. In each case, the alternative hypothesis produced the only plausible explanation seen. The assessment says more thoroughly and technically what I argued in an article last year. As I said, Caitlin Johnstone is one of the people who was ringing the alarm on this as well. Obviously, I've been demonetized so many times about my Syria videos. Y'all know how I feel about that situation. So there's a lot of us. Jimmy Dore, Abby Martin, a lot of people have been saying this. We were attacked and maligned for it. That the physics of the airdrop cylinder narrative makes no sense whatsoever. And this is a problem because the reason we were given for the US, the UK, and France launching airstrikes on the Syrian government targets in April of 2018 was that 2 cylinders full of poison gas had been dropped from aircraft by the Syrian Air Force and killed dozens of civilians. And remember, those missiles were launched before an investigation had even started. Remember that. And also remember how many politicians did not speak up about this. And by the way, Tulsi, my estimation, if I can recall correctly, was the only one who called this out. Says Trump does not have a right to do this without an investigation. We need to be conclusive before we just start launching missiles that killed according to Kaylin Johnstone, dozens of civilians. The assessment is signed by Ian Henderson, who the WGSPM were able to verify as a long-time OPCW trained inspection team leader. The OPCW reportedly denied that Henson was involved in this Duma fact-finding mission, but the WGSPM counters that statement as false. The engineering sub-team could not have been carrying out studies in Duma locations 2 and 4 unless they had been notified by OPCW to the Syrian National Authority, the body that oversees compliance with the Chemical Weapons Convention, as FFM inspectors. It is unlikely that Henderson arrived on a tourist visa. Oh man. So far, this is the establishment narrative managing Machine's only attempt at refuting the latest revelations, indicating that Duma attack last year was staged. Basically boils down to their conspiracy theorists, and the official narrative disagrees with them. Now, I want to conclude this by saying that, guys, I don't know how else to say this. And some people may be like a little hesitant to take it in, because if you're new to the political scene and to the reality of the military industrial complex and the war machine, this might be a little hard to take in. But I want to be very clear about something. This was what we call a false flag attack. This report from members of the OPCW is indicating that dead bodies were dragged onto a scene that a fake weapon was placed on, and they tried to use it to blame the Syrian government. Do you understand how bad that? Do you understand how bad it is even still? That there's only been, we have a bunch of presidential candidates, right? We have a bunch of leaders right now. A lot of leaders. And maybe 2 have gotten this correct. That's Tulsi, the same one who was saying yesterday on the news that the Trump administration is attempting to manufacture consent in Iran. It seems very likely that they have been trying to do the same in Syria. This is why the commander-in-chief job is so important, because Trump listened to the wrong people. He listened to the wrong people. Whereas, like Tulsi Gabbard said, he doesn't have to listen to these generals and these secretaries of defense and secretary of because they lie, and she is aware of that. So not only at the presidential level, but we need to be electing politicians who will call this out and demand accountability. And would love to know what your thoughts and opinions are about this. So make sure you leave a like, share the video, leave a comment below. And hey people, remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace. Thanks for watching that segment of Mikasa Sukasa. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, on Roku TV, and on JustNForm.com. Also, you can make sure that you're subscribed to the channel by